Hey everybody, my name's Mike. I'm an addict.
Hi, Mike.
My clean date's June 14th, 1990. There's probably a lot of people in here who weren't even born then, but that's okay. It's really humbling to share my story in a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous. For a long time when I was new, it was always about getting up here and trying to impress people, trying to sound good, say the right things. And, it's like to carry a message of recovery is really important, guys. To be able to stand up here and share about what I went through, how I got where I got to be, and what it's like is really humbling. And so today it's like if I can reach one person and change maybe one person's way of thinking, my life is well worth it. I try to carry a message of Narcotics Anonymous, a message of clarity, which talks about being an addict. Narcotics Anonymous. When I come into Narcotics Anonymous, I'm not an addict I'm not a happy, joyous, free, recovering addict. I'm an addict. I had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to read the history of Narcotics Anonymous, Jimmy Kay and all those who got into this. And it's really interesting because in the beginning it was called Drugs Anonymous. And they wanted they felt like it was more important to center it about addiction. So when I come down here, and we talk about addiction, it's not about the heroin addict. It's not about the pot smoker, the guy who wants to drink too much, or the meth heads. It's about addiction. And that's what hopefully my message is going to be about tonight, is about addiction and Narcotics Anonymous and how being clean today has saved my life in many, many occasions. I always like starting off with, and I usually have a few stories in my shares, and I wanted to start off about telling you the story about in the old days, actually here in town, where the Dairylicious used to be an old train depot. And when my mom was really young, she used to tell me about the circus would come in town, and it would always come in the train. And if you look at the old history books of the town, there are some pictures of the elephants and all coming down Main Street. And there was this little boy, he wanted to go to the circus so bad. I just want to go to the circus, Dad. I just want to go to the circus. And so his mom said, well, if you get up extra early, eat your breakfast, make your bed, do your chores, then you can go to the circus. So, he gets up extra early, he makes his bed, he eats his breakfast, he does his dishes, even helps his sister do her dishes so he can go to the circus. And so he runs downtown and he's sitting on the curb. He sees the elephants go by, he sees the lions go by, the jugglers, the ballerinas, the MC, of the circus go by, and he's just in awe and wonder of this spectacular event going on in front of him. And the parade goes by and he just sort of walks home. And his dad said, well, how was the circus? He said, well, I saw this, and I saw this. His dad said, well, did you go to the circus? He said, yeah, I saw him go by. And his dad said, no, son, the circus is in the big top. Now, how this relates is to recovery in my head, and what I've always talked about is people come to the parade in Narcotics Anonymous. They come to meetings. They'll sit here and they'll watch the parade go in and out, just saying, wow, this is cool. Wow, what they said was really neat. I want to try that. Oh, wow, I feel really bad for that. The big top in Narcotics Anonymous is the 12 steps, guys. That's where the show is. That's where freedom is. I first started my trek in recovery, started back in 1989 when I was locked up for the last time doing my last stint in jail. And you're not going to hear all my war stories because you know what? You guys know what it's like to use. You guys know what it feels like to be at the bottom of a barrel. So why do I got to tell you what my life was like when I hit the bottom? I just got out of prison. And the whole time I was in, it's like, I'm done, man. I'm not going to use again. I'm not going to use again. I was hooked up with a guy who was from another fellowship. And by the way, I'm thankful for that fellowship because they are what gave us our life in Narcotics Anonymous. And he was in jail doing time for amends that he had to clear up in his life. And he kept talking about, well, my sponsor's going to pick me up, and at midnight. And I'm thinking, well, that's cool. Apparently you're an alcoholic. You have a problem. I don't. So your sponsor's picking you up. And midnight, his sponsor picked him up, and took him. I didn't get out till like 6 o'clock the next morning. They dropped me off at the bus station. He went to a meeting. I went to the old playground, saw the old friends. Hadn't used all that time. Somebody said, "Who wants to get high?" Boom, man, my hand was up, just as breathing in and breathing out. I want to get high. And for the next 3 days, I stayed high. And somewhere in that 3 days, it came to me, I can't do this any longer. You see, my life was like a book, 40 chapters in a book. Chapter 1, Mike gets high. Mike gets loaded. Mike steals things. Mike goes to jail. Mike loses everything. Mike gets clean. Chapter 2, Mike's clean. Mike gets high. Mike loses relationships. Mike steals things. Mike does other things. And then it's like 30-some chapters of this. And after finally, I just can't do this anymore. And I remember that guy from prison, saying, wow, if that other fellowship worked for him, maybe Narcotics Anonymous would work for me. Because I saw their ad in the paper as to their meetings, back in the old days when we printed our things in meetings. We didn't have phones, guys. A sponsor might carry a pager. You beep his pager. Oh, that's so-and-so calling me. I better go call him. You have to leave a meeting, find a pay phone, call him back. And I went to my first meeting. And it's like, it caught on. I knew I couldn't, and I heard people's message of hope. You know what? Because I knew I couldn't use drugs again. But you know what? About a week after that, I was talking to somebody, and he was like, so what'd you do last night? Oh, I went to the bar and had some drinks. He's like, we can't drink in Narcotics Anonymous. What do you mean I can't drink? I don't have a problem with alcohol. And what did he do? He looked at me and said, liquid dope, duh. No, he didn't say that. I'm just kidding. But, he's like, no, we don't use anything in Narcotics Anonymous. No mind, mood-altering chemicals. I was like, oh, shit. Okay. So, I stopped using right then and there. And, they told me I had to get a sponsor. And a lot of people have heard this story about my first sponsor, man. I'm sitting at a meeting. This guy rolls up, and, back then it was a 1990 Corvette, brand new, a good-looking woman on his arm, and on the front of his car it said 12 SODMF on it. And so it's like, well, he's got a nice car, he has money, he has a good-looking woman. That's what I want in my life, And I told him, I said, I want what you have in your life, including your old lady, man. He said, he pulls out the car key. He says, here, take the car. You ain't getting her. And so I asked him about his license plate, and he said, whoa, dude, you've only been clean a few days. You're not even ready for that heavy shit, man. You keep coming back, and we'll talk about that. Stay clean for 30 days. Go 30 meetings in 30 days, and we'll talk about it. I think, okay, I can do that. Went to 30 meetings in 30 days, which was a tough road to haul, man. Those first 30 days, when I hear people in narcotics, I say, I've only been clean for 30 days. I've only been clean for 60 days. That's a long time for an addict, man. We have to stop putting ourselves down like this little bit of time we have is nothing compared to others. You know how hard it is for an addict to stay clean for 30 days? Hell, I couldn't do it for 24 hours at one point in my life. So it's like for 30 days, man, I did it. And you don't know how that serenity prayer saved my bacon more days than not. It's like, God, just don't let me use today, man. I just don't want to get high today, man. I don't want to use. Just till the noon meeting, man. I'll go to the noon meeting, and then we'll figure it out. And I go after the noon meeting. It's like, okay, I feel better. And so 30 days came around, and he's like, I finally asked him, what does the 12 SODMF stands for? And he looked at me and says, it stands for 12 steps or die, motherfucker. I'm like, okay. What does that mean? He says, well, if you want to live, you're going to work the steps of Narcotics Anonymous. Okay, maybe I don't want to work the steps of Narcotics Anonymous. Well, then you need to find another sponsor. Oh, wow. You know, it's like a sponsor is here to direct you through the steps. You know, and he said, I'm not your friend. I'm not your employer. I'm not your taxi cab. And I'm not your bank. If you need any of that shit, you go find it somewhere else, because that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to work you through the steps. So that's what he did. We sat down. We talked about step one. You know, it was like we admitted we were powerless over our addiction and that our lives had become unmanageable. You know, it's funny there, you know, because I was reading the basic text lately, and it talks about that, how it talks about how we're powerless over the addiction, not the drugs, over the addiction. What's the addiction? It's the physical, mental, spiritual disease. It's the obsession, compulsion, and self-centeredness of addiction. That's what addiction is. So I was powerless over that, which meant, you know, when I look back on my life, yeah, I couldn't save a wake-up call. You know, it's like, you know, when you use certain dope, man, it's like, if you didn't get it in a certain amount of time, man, you were hurting. And it's like, okay, man, you know, I got to get some sleep. I'm going to save this for the morning. So you lay down for a little bit. You can't sleep. It's like, and it just kept calling my name. Mike, I'm over here. I know you're there, man. You're there in the morning time, man. Just leave me alone. I'm okay for right now. Oh, but remember how I make you feel so good? You know, and I'd get up and I'd use it before the wake up, you know. You know, that compulsion. Once I start, I can't stop on my own. You know, there were times I was stopped, you know, whether it was the law enforcement or whatever, I was stopped. And that obsession, you know, just because I stopped using, that compulsion will go away fairly quick, you know, within a week's time, maybe 2 weeks' time. But it's the obsession that I had to deal with. That obsession that tells me that, you know, when shit's going wrong in my life, Mike, I will make you feel so much better. I'll make you forget that pain she's putting you through. I will help you. You know, that's the obsession. You know, God, man. You know, some dope, you know, it's like the first time I used a certain dope drug, you know, it was like almost like kissing the face of God. It's like, wow. You know, that's how that term chasing smoke came around, man. Chasing the dragon. It's like we're always looking for that first one, and it's like my powerlessness was like that perfect. Remember that perfect buzz we would get? I would use. Okay, man. Okay, just a little bit more. I'll use a little bit more. A little bit more. I'd use again, and you get there, and it's not quite there, and you use more, and it puts you over the edge. You ever been there before? That was my cycle, man. That was the obsession and the compulsion to use. Just a little bit more. I got to get there. And then I'd go over the edge. You know, it's funny how that first step talks about we admitted we were powerless. So once I figured out that I was powerless over it, you know, it's like, what do you mean? You know, I was powerless. Well, you're not using it now, are you? It's like, no. Well, then it has no power over you. And that's the way the addiction works in our lives. If I keep it in check, as long as it's not in my body, it has no power over me. The narcotics has no power over me. But man, my life was still unmanageable. You know, how unmanageable it made my life. You know, my life was managed for several years in the California Penal Institution. You know, other people had to manage my life. We started talking about step 2, you know, about coming to believe in a power greater than myself. And here's like, okay, this is where the religious people come out, you know. And we talked about this power greater than myself. You know, I was like, dude, you know, I was like, what do you mean? You know, it's like, well, did you have any powers greater than yourself when you were using? Oh, hell no, man. Oh, you're trying to tell me that the drugs weren't a power greater than yourself? Well, yeah, it was. You know, and so it's like when I take a hard look at it, there's always been a power greater than myself, whether it's for the bad or for the good. You know, so it's time to come to grips with that power greater than myself and realize that it could restore me to sanity. Now, when I talk about sanity in here, you know, a lot of us think, I like a lot of people think, well, sanity means I'm no longer crazy. You know, look at me, guys. There's no hope for you. I'm still crazy. But it's what I learned as far as the book talks about how we use because we enjoy the effect, not what it tasted like, not what it smelled like, not how it burned the nose, burned the veins or whatever, but for the effect. In other words, when I was tense, it took that away. When I was feeling insecure, it gave me that courage. So it was the effect that I was after. But it goes on to tell me that after a while, no matter how hard it damages me, that I can no longer distinguish the true from the false. And to me, that is the definition of insanity. No longer to be able to distinguish what's true and what's false. You see, we almost have it backwards when we're using. What I thought was true was really false. Like, well, I can stop at any time. Well, maybe if I tried this drug or this drug, smoking weed, whoever, nobody robs a bank on smoking weed, because they're sitting in their chair, eating Twinkies or something, They're too chilled out to go rob a bank, so I'll lay off the other stuff and just do that, That's where that insanity was in my life. And so what that second step tells me that I can be returned to sanity, to where I can see the difference between what's true today and what's false. In other words, today I know that it's true that if I pick up exactly where my life will go. It's true today that if I don't go to meetings, my life will become pretty insane and chaotic. It's true in my life if I take the time after a meeting to talk to a newcomer who I don't even know who he is and stand over there in the corner, that my life might be just a little bit better and I might be able to help somebody stay clean one more day. Those are the truths in my life today. The steps talk about principles in our lives. That first step for me is about honesty. Because if I can't get honest with myself, how can I ever get through the denial? How can I ever step back and say, wow, you have a problem, if I can't be honest with myself? That second step is about, and when I really look at and do a thorough first step, it leaves you with that feeling of, God, I can't control this thing, and my life is out of control. And if it stopped there, we would have that feeling of, oh, fuck. That's where that second step is so cool, because that's what gives me hope. That second step gives me hope that my life can change. I whenever I share, if somebody gets up like this, I love to pick on them. It's like a comedian. Never stand up and walk out when a comedian's on stage, man. You're doomed. But that second step about hope is what gave me the courage to go on. Then we went to that third step. We made a decision to turn our will and our life over the care of God as we understood Him. You know what? Three frogs are sitting on a log. 3 of them make a decision to jump off. How many are on the log? 3. Exactly. You can make I can make all the decisions in the world, but it doesn't mean anything if I don't do the action. I can make a decision to turn my will and life over the care of God, but if every day I don't get up and I don't try to figure out what His will is for me today and how my life is supposed to change and then do it, all I've done is made a decision. And you know what? Decisions are like peeing in your pants. It makes you feel good and warm. And that's about the only effect it gives you. It's like, so that third step was about making a decision and then following it. Turning my will, this self-righteous addict, my will and my life. What does that mean? It means make a decision to get into action. Do the rest of the steps, Mike. Do the rest of the steps. And you know what? As I read through the basic text here recently, it was funny how when I read each step, at the end of it says immediately or promptly next. It didn't say, well, you did step 1. Take a 3-week vacation, Mike. Go do this, go do that. It talks about how we do this stuff. And why does it tell us to do that? Because the longer I put that stuff off, the darkness and those fears and those secrets that I'm keeping continue to grow. And these steps are about freedom. these steps are about taking what was me, seeing what was me, and becoming a new person. That fourth step, was about looking at my life, a factual look at my life. And what we did was, he told me, he said, Mike, we're not going to look at the emotional part of it. He said, any good decision that you ever do in life from here on out, if you look at the facts, the best decisions are made when you have all the facts. So it's like he took me through the fourth step, the old-fashioned way, where I wrote down all these resentments, what they did to me, how it affected me, and then my part in it. Which was cool up to that last end. It's like, my part in it? Because I had been a victim my whole life. I was a piece of crap. I never mounted to anything. I was a thief. I was an adulterer because the old lady wouldn't give it up, so I had to go find some other old lady. I was worthless. I was a thief because my own man told me I was worthless in life, so I proved him right. I was a victim. I deserved it. Now, I'm not saying that sometimes we aren't victims, because I think sometimes things happen to addicts, especially when addicts grow up around other addicts, especially when there's young kids involved. I think there's things that happen as a young child when you are truly a victim. And there are ways to deal with that. And I'll talk about that in the 9th step. But you know what? Up until anything, when I was an adult and I was making my own choices, I am not a victim. And so I had to look at my part in it. Well, this was my part, this was my part. Then I looked at my relationships. It's funny because in the basic text and in one of the pamphlets, it talks about you look at your relationships, about sexual part of the relationship, just other relationships, about, one of the questions was, who did you harm in your selfish, self-centered pursuit of sex? And I was like, well, all of them, man. Because that's what it was about. It had nothing to do with the female. It had to do with me. It had to do with me fulfilling my own needs. It had nothing to do with saying you as an individual, you as a person mattered, because you didn't. In relationships, it's like I always thought relationships was about sex, and it's not. I always thought that achieving intimacy was through sex, and it's not. What I've come to find out today is, sex is an expression of intimacy that already exists. And that's a whole new concept for me, to get to know somebody. I know in NA, what the typical NA relationship, we've heard this before. Hey, you want to go to the movies? Yeah, let's go to the movies. Okay, let's go to the movies. Afterwards, we'll rent a truck. We'll move your shit in with me. That's the way us addicts do it, man. And then 3 months later, I'm on the phone to my sponsor going, this bitch, man, she's driving me crazy. And he's like, well, I told you. Yeah, but man, we just got along we got along so well together, man. We were talking spiritual things. We were talking the steps. Man, it was almost like I was sponsoring her. She was sponsoring me. Oh, it's like, that's how we do it around here. When I sponsor guys, I tell them, man, you stay out of a relationship. Let's work on us first. I love people who come down here and they say, I just love myself today. How can I love myself if I don't even know who I am? And that's what these steps do. It helps me discover who I am. And that's what that fourth step is about, is a fact finding. Who am I? Well, he's insecure. He's fearful. He's self-centered, egotistical, all these things I found out about me. And it was funny because it's like I did that fourth step knowing all along I had to look at that fifth step. And he's like, don't worry about that now, man. We'll get to that fifth step. And that fifth step is if you read the basic text, it says that the fifth step is a freedom step. This is where we find freedom in the steps. And it's so true, man. I've talked to a lot of guys. I've done a lot of fifth steps. And you know what? I've yet to be surprised, You know, maybe I haven't done it. You know, but I guarantee you other guys I've sponsored have either done it or had it done to them or whatever, you know. But I sat down with my sponsor and we talked about my life story. You know, and it was really amazing because it's like we would talk about stuff that I did when I was using. You know, and it was real funny because, you know, when I talked about how you know, when I was selling dope, you know, I was really cool. I was really tough. And when people owed me money, I'd go kick in the door. I'd take a fucking shotgun. I'd stick it in their mouth. And you say, you give me your goddamn money right now or I'm going to blow your fucking head off. You know, they'd always find the money. You know, but then when I talked about the things that I did in my addiction that made me feel like less than a man, you know, when I had to prostitute myself out just to get the dope, I wanted to get real quiet about that. I didn't want that son of a bitch to hear what I had to say. And he'd go, excuse me, Mike, I didn't hear you. Man, I did this and this. I didn't hear you. Okay, I did this. You know, I said, okay, man. You know, and it's amazing when we do a fifth step. It's like, at the end, he shared some of his story with me. And for once in my life, I felt like I connected. It's like I was a part of something now. Because I'm not unique. You know, he did things that I've done. And it was amazing. You know, and it's like, in doing so, you know, he said, Mike, you know, I didn't ask you to say that stuff out loud to embarrass you. I had you say it out loud so you could see it, look at it, and then be prepared for God to remove it out of your life. It's like, wow, okay, that makes sense. And you know, isn't that what the steps are about? You know, I had this mental revelation today. It's like we do that fourth and fifth step, and it's like the sixth and seventh step is all about making amends, basically to me. Really is what those are about. And the eighth or ninth are about making amends to the others. And the reason I say that is that sixth and seventh step talks about, you know, I've got to look. We're entirely, that's right, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. So, in other words, I had to look at all my defects that I found in my fifth step. That insecurity, the fear, the self-centeredness, the self-seeking. And I had to be entirely ready to be rid of those things. Was I ready? I don't know, man. I still like hanging on to that fear sometimes. Or that self-centeredness really wants to make me do things and manipulate people and do the things I really don't want to do. So, but I had to become ready. But more importantly than that, it was that fact-finding of all these defects of myself. Those things that I've always thought that I would always beat myself up for. And that seventh step was humbly ask God to remove them in my life. I like that part. That spiritual step of 7 is humility. You know, either we're humble or we're humiliated. You know, and that's what I had to remember. And it's like, God doesn't, in my life at least, things weren't taken out of my life like those character defects and just avoid. I truly believe that things are taken out of my life and a strength takes its place. For years of my life, part of my fourth step was fear of rejection because of, you know, upbringing in my family, fear of rejection. Fear to ask a girl to go to the movies. Well, she says no. I'd much rather not ask her than have her say no, you know. But it's like, what happened in my life? There was a point where God, if you want to say that's what happened, I find myself in a position in a career in life where I've got to ask to make a living. I've got to ask for the sale. I've got to ask you to do this. I got to ask you if you want to do that. And it becomes a strength in my life. And that's how it works. The eighth and ninth step, you know, is about making that entire list of everybody I've ever harmed in my life. It's an entire list, folks. It's not the people I just think, the easy ones. Grandma, Grandpa, Uncle George, Aunt Sue, Mom, Dad, sister, brother, you know, blah. No. You know, there were tons of them on my list of people I couldn't even remember. You know, the prostitutes I beat up, the dope men I stole from, the pregnant mothers I sold dope to, people I just can't remember. So I just put that out there. And there was that one name on my list, man. My sponsor made me put this one name on my list, and by God, there's no fucking way I was going to make amends to that son of a bitch. He said, well, you're not ready for step 8 then. I ain't going to do it, man. Well, you think about it when you're ready, and you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, you'll get ready. So, but it's like, he was such a good manipulator because it's like he knew what he was doing. Because you think I went home and forgot about it? I said, no, I ain't going to do it. Went on, did my life. No, us addicts, we like the mental hump shit, don't we? Somebody tells us something, it's like, I go home and I think about it. Okay, I'm not going to talk to that guy. I'm going to tell my sponsor, I'll just find a new sponsor. All this stuff that goes through our head. And finally, I go back to my sponsor, okay, you win. I'll do it. He said, great, man. Now let's start on the ones you're going to make amends to, because that 8th, again, all I had to do was be willing to make the amends. I didn't have to do it. I just had to be willing to do it. And that's what that 8th step is about. And the 9th step, making those amends, it's real easy to go back to the people who like you and things like that to make those amends. One of my hardest amends I did was with my daughter, Candace. She was probably 7, 8 years old at the time. You see, when I was actively using, I was a monster. When I came home, I could be all strung out. All I wanted to do was sleep, get a little bit of rest, and go hit it again. But, as I come home one morning from a long run, and my daughter and my kids are just waking up, of course there's no food in the house because what did Dad take the food money for? For his dope. I come home, I'm tired, I just want to go to bed, and she's crying because she's hungry. Of all things, she's hungry. Jeez. You selfish little kid. Crying. And so I told her the exact same thing I was told when I was a kid. If you're going to cry, I'm going to give you something to cry about. So I grab a belt, and I start beating her ass. That's the kind of monster I was. And as I'm beating her ass, she rolls over, and the belt buckle hits her right there in the mouth and chips her tooth. How do you tell a kid you're sorry for that shit? How do you make things like that right? You know what? All I could do was I could just take her, and I say, Candace, Daddy was a monster. I owned up to it. I was a monster. And what I did, I was wrong for what I did. And Daddy's never going to do that again. And the miracle of this program, the miracle of the steps happens when that little girl, her big blue eyes and that chipped tooth smile looks at me and says, Daddy, I love you. Wow. Man. You know what? That erased all that pain. It erased all that guilt, all that shame that I had carried for years and years. That's what the steps do in our lives, guys. It freed me from that guilt, that shame of carrying that stuff. I can't give this to you. I can't come up here and say, work the steps. I'm going to work them for you. I can't do that. Nor would I. You know what? It's like everything I was ever given in life, I destroyed. Whether it was toys as a kid, whatever. When it was given to me, I destroyed it. Because there was no value in it. Recovery, my 27 years, I have earned them every single day by not picking up one day at a time. I heard the other day somebody in a meeting said, they wanted the 27 years recovery I had, and it's like, oh God, no, you don't. And I hope, the reason I say that is, if you look around the room and there's somebody who has more time than you, what I hope you learn to say is, I want the principles in my life that they have they've been able to get what they have. Because it's like money. A millionaire. It's like, I want $1 million. Well, I could go rob a bank and have the $1 million. But what I want is the ability to go out there and the determination to achieve that stuff, rather than somehow getting it. You want to be clean for a year. Go rob a bank, or go stick a gun in some guy's face, and they'll lock you up for that long. You'll have clean for a year. But I want the principles of those people who've been here before me, who worked through the steps, who changed their lives. What's life like now in recovery? Because that's what 10, 11, and 12 is about. Is about life. I was at 5-6 years clean. I got married in recovery. Thought I found the woman of my dreams. We were happy for a couple years, and things just didn't work out because she wasn't an addict. And I listened to these people in Narcotics Anonymous who've been around for a while saying, "Well, those people don't understand us. You can't talk to them about recovery because they don't get it." You know what? Unfortunately for me, that was a mistake, because what I did was I closed her out of part of my life, because you people are my life. And anybody who's going to be in my life has to know about this stuff. They don't have to get me when when I talk about the self-centeredness and stuff like that, but I got to open up, And so my self-centeredness, and just for these people who've been in, recently, around here, I've seen it happen, it's like so-and-so breaks up and so-and-so back together again. So-and-so breaks up, they're back together again. Oh, then they're with now and so-and-so, now they're back together again. I understand that. My wife, it's like I caught her cheating on me. I actually caught him in bed. And had I, it's like a friend of mine, I went to talk to him first, because that's what the program told me to do. When things are going wrong in my life, to talk to somebody in the fellowship. And that's what I did. I said, Melanie's cheating on me, and I'm going to go kill him. He's like, "Do you have a gun at home?" I said, "No, but I can go get one." He said, "No, you don't." He said, "Get in the car, we'll go there." And so I was like, banged on the door, went in there, just told her, "You need to get your shit and get out of the house." But what did I do a month later? "Oh, I'm sorry, man. Come on back. We'll work it out." And she found somebody else, and like a month later, "Oh, come on back. That fear of rejection. That fear, the thing that I learned in all that was, one of my low points in recovery was, I did love her. And to hear somebody tell me that they did not want me, that crushed me. Not to be wanted. And it's like, wow. But what happened was, eventually, after about, I'll admit it, about 5 times doing this back and forth dance, I was sitting there, it was over Thanksgiving, and I can remember, I looked at her and I just said, "You know what? This just isn't working, is it?" And she's like, "No." I said, "Let's just go our separate ways." What a difference. How many times in addiction did we rip and tear and kill just to get out of relationships? I don't have to do that today, That's what the recovery has taught me. Recovery has taught me how to be a good father, how to be a good son. I've had some special times in recovery. The day my father died, I went to see him that night, and he was at his house, and visited with him. I didn't know he was dying that night. I kissed him on his forehead, said, "I love you, Dad, and I'll see you tomorrow." And it was weird, because I went home and I went to bed, and I had this dream, and I remember it as just as clear today as it happened then. He was standing there talking to me, saying, "Mike, it's okay, man. It's okay. You take care of Mom, and I am fine." And then the phone's ringing, waking me up, telling me my dad's gone. This thing is weird sometimes, folks. But you know what? It's those kinds of spiritual experiences that help me stay clean. It's those kinds of spiritual connections that help me to strive and to be a little bit better person. 5 years ago, 4 years ago in April, my mother passed away. I was the main caretaker of my mother. I lived at home with my mom. I had to take care of her, man, because that's what a good son does. That's what recovery has taught me to do, to be a good son, to be a good person. Yeah, there were times in my life when it's like, "Mom, I just want some self-centeredness." And there were times in my life I kept thinking, I can't wait till you die so I can just live my life. You know how many times I wish I could just say, one more day? Night she passed away out the nursing home, I can remember I laying with her in her bed, stroking her hair, saying, Mom, I love you. It's okay to go home. And it's amazing because she suffered from dementia for years. Didn't know if it was me or my dad or one of my brothers. That night, her mind was clear as bell. And be able to lay in that bed with her and stroke her hair as she took her final breath. You see, I don't have to use behind that stuff. So don't give me these excuses of, oh God, I got high because so-and-so left me. Oh God, I got high because I don't have a job. Oh God, I got high because they repoed my house. They don't work in Narcotics Anonymous, folks. I don't care what we go through. Somebody in these rooms have been through it. And we don't use no matter fucking what. You know what? I'm tired of burying people. I'm tired of loving you people and then watching you die. Sometimes it causes me to back away. I don't purposely do it, but I find myself doing that. But you know what? It's about me getting rid of that self-centeredness, loving that next addict, and not worry about the choices they're going to make. All I can do is be there for them in the present. And that's what this thing's about, guys. You know what? This thing is bigger than all of us. I am so happy I was able to share my story with you. I'm so happy I didn't get into my drug-a-log, because that's just a waste of my time and your time. The keys to recovery: don't use no matter what. Go to a meeting. Find a sponsor who's going to work the steps. Be of service. Anybody? How many people had over a year in here again? How many people over 3 years? Guarantee you, these people who have over 3 years are working the steps, have a sponsor who works the steps with them, go to meetings, and have service. That's what this thing's about, man. And in closing, let me just tell you, that this thing is amazing. And if you could see what I see in you through my eyes, you guys wouldn't get high anymore. I see potential in you. We can achieve whatever we want to achieve. I heard an interesting thing the other day. It's like, and it applies to addicts. It's like a slingshot, You take a slingshot, you go like this, and it goes out like that. Poof. Go like this, it goes out like that. That's the way these normie people are, But for us addicts, the further we go back, the further in shit we go in life, the further we go down that scale, the higher and further we're going to soar. So if nobody's told you that they love you today, why? Because you're an asshole. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. That was amazing.